Oh, hi. Before we get into the episode proper, I wanted to add a small addendum. Later on in the episode, I'll go through and I'll talk about the new ethereal items that got added in with the PTR, and you'll hear me go through and comment on how a couple of them might be a little blander than others, like the Witch Doctor or the Monk. And, well, it seems I wasn't the only one that thought so, because the day after the episode was recorded, which was Wednesday the 23rd, on Thursday the 24th, Blizzard patched the PTR and, of course, made a whole bunch of changes, particularly to the Monk and Witch Doctor ethereal items. So, the things that I said at the time, of course, made sense, but now not so much. So, definitely props on Blizzard on going through and making some updates and changes so that way everybody gets to experience the coolness that are these new ethereals for the season, and that they're not just kind of bland stat sticks. But with that, I will now give you off to, well, myself in the episode proper. Thank you. Oh, hi. Well, it's been a couple weeks, and so I guess that means it's Wednesday. It's time for another episode. We spent a lot of time going through and talking in the last episode about all the things that are going through and coming, and well, we've got a couple of those things have now slightly, arisen, though they're not exactly here yet. So I'd like to welcome you all to episode 212. Ethereals are coming. We're getting closer. We're getting there. And in tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about, obviously, some of the big things going through the community. We finally have a release date for Diablo 2 Resurrected. We've got the PTR for Diablo 3, which has some really interesting mechanic coming around this time. We're still waiting on that D4 blog, and I want to end out the episode with going on a little bit of a rant about non-game related content that I feel Blizzard could be doing and that we haven't gotten because of some things another company has started doing in the world of tabletop gaming that got announced today. But I want to welcome you all, to this episode. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, episode 211 was focused a lot on all of the things and potential future announcements that we had to go through and look forward to, and we got a couple of them. While we didn't exactly get the answers to everything, especially one of the more burning questions when it comes to Diablo 4. Spoilers, for later on in the episode. But we did get some other ones, such as Diablo 2 Resurrected. We now know that Diablo 2 is going to be going through and launching September 23rd, and we'll be having a beta launching in August. Now, that beta also is going to be open, so if you pre-order the game, you'll have access to go and play the game. But even in the beta, we still will not have access to my two favorite classes, the Assassin and the Necromancer. So I guess I'll have to play like a Paladin or something instead, just to go through and fill some time for that, I guess, month? 2 months-ish? That we'll have in order to go through and play the game before the full game itself releases. A lot of people are excited. There's a lot of chatter going on about it, and I really look forward to going through and checking it out. As I've said many times, while I looked forward to Diablo 2 Resurrected after its announcement, it wasn't the highest on my priority list until I actually got around to playing it and seeing that it feels so much more than just a graphical update when you go through and play it, even though it kind of is just a graphical update. But they put so much time and effort into every little detail in that game. I can't wait. Absolutely cannot wait to go through and get my hands on it. Seriously looking forward to it. That is awesome. In something kind of tangentially related to that is, as we know, that was announced at BlizzCon Online, Diablo 2 Resurrected is going to have cross progression. And what they meant by that was you can play the game on the Switch save your character, log out, and then go on the PC and play, and then go on your PlayStation and play. And you can play that same character across all the different platforms, but there won't be actual cross-play. So you won't be able to play on your Switch with people that are on the PC at the same time. When you go through and you play on the Switch, you're only playing with other people on the Switch. And the Switch is also going to be another one of those special cases because, you know, you can, you know, go offline and like walk around with your Switch. And I'm not sure what they're going to be doing for that. If those characters as offline characters, which now opens up the possibility for modding and such, could then be brought into a BattleNet environment or an online environment. You know, I'm sure those are questions that will probably get answered as we get closer to the release, or maybe not until release itself. But one of the things that has been going around the last couple of weeks is that they're actually implementing crossplay in Overwatch. And I believe it actually like just launched yesterday or today. I don't follow Overwatch news too religiously, so you'll have to forgive me on that one. But the you know, this was something that is kind of huge, big, because it's not something that they ever had, you know, committed to in the past, and then out of nowhere, you know, we went through and it's just like, hey, crossplay's coming, and we're going to start with Overwatch. We're going to start with Overwatch. How many other cross-platform games does Blizzard have out there besides Overwatch at the moment? Well, spoilers, it's Diablo 3 and soon to be Diablo 2. There's not a lot of wiggle room out there for them to go through and start doing crossplay with other titles without it going and affecting, you know, Diablo in that respect. So it makes me wonder if they're going to change, you know, that marketing for Diablo 2 Resurrected to being cross-progression to cross-play and actually allow people to go and play from the PC and the consoles alike. Because that's one of the things people were talking about, and it's kind of come up like with the E3 and some of those conferences and such. We learned a little bit more, you know, that people have been asking about the like the button layouts. Because on the controller, you kind of like simulate like key toggles and such. Because it, when like say if you map the shoulder buttons, you know, or even just your standard controller with 4 buttons is more than the 2 that you get normally, you know, on the mouse and keyboard. And you have to like hit all the F keys or your bound keys to swap between all of your skills, and everything requires additional clicks. You know, why not just make some of that same functionality for the keyboard and give us access to a little bit more control in the game? You know, if you're going through all the trouble of mapping out a controller and doing that on a console, why not just do it on a PC? And then at that point, your gameplay experience is more or less the same. It's not a true 3D game, you know, it's a 2D game. So just having a mouse versus a controller, while we've seen, you know, with Diablo 3, it can have you know, some impact when it comes to like playing different builds and such. Well, you know, Wizard builds on the PC like do not work on console because of targeting. You know, your ability to target specific places for like your skills to go off, meteors to drop, all other types of stuff. You know, I could see like some of that potentially happening in Diablo 2 Resurrected, but probably not to the same degree. You know, there are some things like, you know, being able to target specific corpses with like corpse explosion, being able to, you know, guarantee where like your bone wall is going to go, where your meteors are going to drop, where you're spawning your hydras. Versus, you know, like Frozen Orb and, you know, any lightning skill, that it doesn't really matter too much. You're just pointing in a direction and shooting. So, yeah, I can see it. And I think I like it. I definitely think that I like it without actually having tested or played it or seen it or anything like that. It would be cool. It's just, that's like the one thing that at least I'm a big proponent of, just letting people play together. You know, just, you know, if you can go through and begin to combine those communities between console and PC, Xbox players playing with Switch players, PlayStation players playing with PC users. You know, it's like what's to lose? You know, really, what's to lose? You know, if you like, PvP is optional in Diablo 2, so if you want to go and do it, you know what you're signing up for, and so you know that if you're going to be, you know, going through and PvPing on a controller versus a whole bunch of people playing mouse and keyboard, you know what you're doing at that point. You know, so why not? Why not? Do it. Let's go. But you know, that's like the big D2R news that we got, you know, in the past couple of weeks. Beyond that, obviously the talk of the town has been the announcement of the Diablo patch 2.7 PTR. And so we now have, you know, everything that we've got for season 24 in the new season, which is Ethereals. They're kind of bringing back, you know, this mechanic from Diablo 2. And if you've never played Diablo 2 before, and Diablo 3 is like your first title, you might not understand quite where that is coming from. And what it is Ethereals are a special item that has souped up base stats. So the armor had more armor, the weapons did more damage, but they couldn't be repaired. So it was a really powerful item, or a really powerful buff that you might get, especially in the early levels, that, you know, would eventually be destroyed. So it was like, if you use it, eventually the item is going to bust and you can't use it any longer, you know, but, you know, why not? It's going to take a while for the durability, and especially while I'm leveling, it's going to be, you know, it's going to have like, you know, tons more armor than anything else that I can equip, or it can be a better item that gives you more armor than something that you don't have the strength to equip, you know, the way that Diablo 2 worked, while still having the lower strength requirements of, say, like, you know, a leather piece versus half plate or something. And, you know, it had, that was one of the things. There were also certain, you know, rune words that preferred Ethereals because they either made the item indestructible, or there were bugs that, even though it didn't make it indestructible, it like glitched out its durability and such. So there are a lot of like little things with that, or maybe it was just something that was quick and easy to replicate, and so you didn't care about throwing these items away. That you wanted it in order to maximize your character. And the ones that were going to be coming up here in Diablo 3 definitely take a slight turn, but are still more about the kind of the mythos of it, where it's about that item hunt. Like, you're going through, instead of trying to find that, you know, the perfect, you know, ethereal, you know, like full plate, or, you know, Kraken mail or whatever it was, that I'm now going to try and find like a full set of weapons in the new season. And it wasn't just that, because that's like what they announced with the patch notes, was I can go through and bring up here in just a moment. Let's see. Open up the proper tab. We can put this over here. And so with the patch notes, you know, they went through, and it's like, oh, it's going to have like a class legendary power and a class passive power, and there'll be some, you know, unique icons. They're going to be bringing back some of the original sounds from Diablo 2. You'll notice some of the items that we'll be going through and showing off here are kind of like reused. They're already existed in Diablo 3, and so they're just reusing that. Some are, you know, brand new, and so they're bringing this item into the game for the first time with some new models, some new artwork and such. It does also state that like they have specific loadouts, you know, so the affixes that roll on each of the items are set. There's still some variance in what those affixes can roll, but you know that if you find this one item, it's always going to have these same rolls. The only things that will change on it is that the legendary power and the class passive are random. There is a limited window for the skills that can roll on the particular items. So it's going to be specific to your class. So you're not going to get a Necromancer legendary property on a Demon Hunter, but there are some like generic legendary properties that can roll on the items. But then there also are a couple of broken ones. Because like the Demon Hunter, it's all 3 ranged weapons, but it can get Carly's point, the Carly's point power on there, and you can't use those weapons in Shadows, which is like the only build that uses Impale. So there are some like little weird inconsistencies and such. And then of course the class passive itself is also random. And at first it was a lot like, so maybe it's like, I can get like a two-hander property on a one-hander, so that way I can then use 2 one-handers with like a two-handed property, and then I can put something else in the cube so I can like swap things around. So there was like some of that, but it didn't really pique anybody's interest until we actually got the items themselves. Before we go through and jump into that, there are there are of course the new portrait frame and a new pet, which are not in the PTR, so we have to wait until the actual season itself launches before we get to see what those new things are. The overall theme and flavor of the season is to help celebrate the anniversary of Diablo 2. Diablo 2 launched, I believe it was June 28th, so just a few days from now, back in 2000. So we're coming up on like the 21st anniversary. Diablo 2 can drink. Yay! And so that was kind of like, I imagine it's gonna be something along those lines. Like when they announced D2R, we got the little Dark Wanderer goblin. So I wonder if we're gonna see something similar to that. Maybe like a Bale goblin or something along those lines. It's probably gonna be related to Diablo 2 in some way. Maybe we might even get the Dark Wanderer. Instead of having like the little comedic goblin type thing, what if we actually get like just like a legit like chibi Dark Wanderer? No, that's a terrible idea. Terrible, absolutely terrible idea. But with all patches, we got a couple of new things to go through and take a look at. They're redesigning the Innis set for monks, so now it's all about the Mystic Allies. Man, this set has seen some changes over time. Not quite as bad as Phoenix. But like when it first started, it was like the Mantra set. Now it's the Mystic Allies set. And of course, to compensate with that, they made some changes to the Mystic Ally skill. Some of the the monk items that interacted with Mystic Ally have gotten buffs or completely different changes and such to go through and work with that. So now it's a pseudo pet build. You have a whole bunch of the Mystic Allies that you get to go and fight with you and deal a whole bunch of damage. I've seen some reports that there's, as maybe what is expected, you start getting some more character models out there, and it's not the size of the calculations, but the number of calculations. So when you've got multiple damage sources hitting a whole bunch of enemies is what can create lag. If you're just going through playing the season, getting Guardian, hitting your GR 100, your GR 120, probably not going to affect you all that much if you're not going to be pushing the 150s and such. But it is something at least to go through and keep in mind that you might run into some performance issues at the very highest level of play with this particular set. We also got a couple of nerfs. The Aegis of Valor 2-piece set bonus was changed rather significantly. It used to be attacking with the Fist of Heavens empowers you, allowing Heaven's Fury to deal 100% increased damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times multiplicatively. And now it does instead 125% increased damage, stacking up to 3 times. So now, instead of getting 100 times 100 times 100, you're just getting 375% increased damage on Fist of the Heavens, as opposed to going to 100 to 200 to 400% on your increased damage. So it takes it down pretty significantly, in terms of the scaling. Because it's not even like to the 400%, because you're actually, like, say when you're dealing with the multiplicative modifiers, say you have an attack that deals 100 damage, and then you times it by 100, so now you do 200 damage. If it's additive with what this set has done, you add an extra 100% stack onto it, you're now doing 300 damage, because you're just doing 200% damage. But the way that the multiplicative stacks worked beforehand is you add that extra 100%, you're not doing 300 damage, you're doing 400 damage. Because that second 100% is applied to the 200, not the original base 100. And then you add the other 100% on there, and in the original one you're now doing 400 damage, and then now in the other one you're doing 800. Because it keeps stacking with itself. It's so it's stacking modifiers on top of modifiers. So this one doesn't sound like it's that big of a change, but it actually, percentage-wise, is pretty big. It's a big nerf, but yeah, Aegis of Valor is still probably going to be one of the top builds for Crusaders because it's just broken as hell. But that's okay. It's fine. It's all right. Let people have fun, right? In the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival, that one, the 6-piece set bonus is getting nerfed. It used to be your simulacrums deal 10,000% increased bone spear damage, and now it's only dealing 6,000% increased bone spear damage. So it kind of is just compensating for the change that they made in the current season, where they added in the item to help increase the bone spear damage. So it's still going to net positive from 2 patches ago. Season 22, we're still moving upwards, but yeah, it's gonna come down from what you're actually performing in this particular season. So it's one of those barring Ethereals and what they add to the game, your top clear for like a Masks Necromancer in the next patch will be lower than what it was in this patch, because you're going through and getting hit with the damage decrease. But having said that, and going through all of these game changes and such, let's go ahead and take a look at the items themselves, because they're pretty badass. These are really nice, and I do want to go through and give credit to the Reddit user. This was Taz Dingo. Went through and did this lovely post a couple of days ago over on our Diablo, where he went through and linked all of the ethereal items that you can go through and find in the PTR. And so we'll just be going through them real quick. So we've got the Barbed Weapons up first, and one thing that's been causing some waves is you have the Grandfather. This one goes all the way back to Diablo 1. It has a lot of history in the Diablo franchise. Was one of the most powerful weapons that you could get in Diablo 1. And for a time, when raw damage is all that mattered, it was an extremely powerful item in Lord of Destruction. Kind of like supplanting Cruels and such. Until you had more like build to fighting items and such, but it's always just had that knack of being an extremely high damage two-handed weapon. And anyone that's played barbarians know it's all about dual wield. You don't really use two-handers. This one though helps make up for that with the modifiers that it has. Now this particular weapon is always going to have the increased attack speed, increased life, critical hit chance, cooldown reduction. All the Ethereals, as a complete opposite of their Diablo 2 counterparts, ignores durability loss, has a massive increase to all stats, and also increases the maximum damage on the weapon by 1 for every Paragon level up to 800, giving you a huge DPS increase, which will help it compete with the one-hander options, but it also gives you a 200% damage bonus to all barbarian skills, which is kind of a callback to the way that D2 items worked. Either they just gave you a bonus to +3 to barbarian skills, which of course increased the damage of all of your barbarian skills, or a lot of other weapons and mods and such that might increase poison damage or ice damage. So you got that nice kind of like little thing that this lovingly handcrafted weapon has these beautiful stats, and then of course you'll always get the random legendary proc in barbarian passive on the weapon itself. So even if you didn't get a passive that you care about, the legendary property will still be pretty important, because most classes, the weapons that you equip and your weapon slot in the cube are kind of like all predetermined. Some classes have some leeway, others have zero leeway in what they equip, and when it comes to those particular classes, you kind of will have to find Ethereal after Ethereal after Ethereal. And they are in between an ancient and a primal, so you'll find them more often than primals, but not as often as ancients. And if you're just going for the feat of strength, and I'll talk about that one in a little bit, there's kind of like a way to game it that they found on the PTR. But at least it gives you something that that there's this extremely powerful item out there that can be like the greatest thing that you've ever done, and people are just having fun with it on the PTR because it's a two-hander that matters. And it's a change that people, if you go back to Diablo 2, people liked like their polearm whirlwind barbarians because the polearm had reach. Diablo 2 had weapon reach, where the actual type of weapon that you equipped affected how far out that you could reach from your character model to hit mobs. And when you equipped like a polearm versus a little one-handed weapon, it significantly increased the area around your character that you would clip mobs with. And so this one is just like a nice callback to having that as an option of being equipable with a two-hander, making it viable. The next weapon up for barbarians is the Doombringer, and so this one has some similar stats. You got your strength, your life percentages, the critical hit chance, which is awesome on having a weapon. But this one has life per hit. It increases the damage of enemies hit by 25% for 5 seconds, and so or reduces the damage of enemies that are hit by 5 seconds, which is another one that's a call out to another round of popular Diablo 2 mods, which was like increases monsters' attack rating, or blind monsters, or decrease the damage that they do, or decrease defense, which doesn't exist in Diablo 3. We have these like little modifiers on there and such. Now, you might see some things like the critical hit chance and the life and the strength. Those aren't like standard across like everything. You might find those ones on like all of it for one particular class, but they're not all there. But this one, being a one-hander, only increases the damage of barbarian skills by 100%. So at least makes it so that way that the grandfather can keep pace with equipping two one-handers. And then the final barbarian, the Grimmer Shred. This one, has a whole bunch of stacked damage modifiers. It does cold, fire, and lightning damage on the weapon, as opposed to just having a single mod. On one side, it's cool. It's another one, that's a callback, because Diablo 2 had the different elemental resistances, so being able to stack multiple types of damage for your attacks, even if it was just a base property of the weapon, was powerful. And this one also just increases the base damage of the weapon by 88% or up to 100%, because there is variance in these. Increased attack speed, increased damage against elites, reduces cooldowns, and killing an elite pack increases your movement speed for 7 seconds. As well as plus 100% to all barbarian skills. I do wonder for this one, because I guess it makes it harder to get a perfect roll. Because the one thing about the Ethereals, you cannot re-roll any of the properties at the Mystic. So you just get with what you have. So if you get some lower rolls on the stats, you just will have to find a better one. There's nothing else that you can do. Though the damage ranges are all pretty short. It's only 184 to 225 on each one of the damage properties. But if you get like, what are the chances, of actually getting the 225 on all three of the stats? How that compares to just getting a max roll on a regular, like one damage type weapon. Not sure. And not sure if it's worth doing the math on that one. But yeah. Continuing to move on. Now we're going through into the Crusader or Paladin items. We've got the Redeemer, and for anyone that spent some time with Diablo 2, you know that staff. You know, that's a staff pretty common, you know, kind of like iconic paladin, you know, mace that we would get, you know, leveling and playing through the game all the time. You know, this one here, again, increases holy damage of skills, is up to 100% increased damage on the weapon. Bonus to strength, plus 100% to all Crusader skills. Reduces the cooldown of skills. Increased damage to undead, increased damage to demons. Increases your golden pickup range by 1 yard, kind of a callback to the increased light radius. You know, it has a reduced level requirement. And then consecutive hits against enemies increase your attack speed by 3%, stacking up to 30% for 3 seconds. Kind of like, you know, your Zeal Crusader vibes and such going and getting on there. The reduced level requirement is an interesting one, because you can find, you know, Ethereals at lower levels. So while you're going through and leveling up at the beginning of the season, or as you level alts to try and accomplish, you know, the seasonal feat of strength, you can find, you know, items, you know, for the various classes. You'll obviously want to try and get a level 71 because you can't re-roll it. You can't even like re-roll the property like in the cube to try and get it, you know, item leveled up to 70. It's just like that is what it is. There's no modifying it. But again, it's just, you know, in D2, especially with rune words and such, you'd have things that had, you know, a full screen of nothing but mods on them, and like half are like, oh, reduced strength requirement by 10. And, you know, just various like little things that really didn't matter so much. But it's not taking away anything. There's, you know, none of these items have like a set number of mods. You know, you'll see that some have more than others. Some, like that, are more flavorful than impactful. Next we have Astron's Iron Ward. This one has, you know, increased weapon damage, strength, increased attack speed. You have your critical hit chance and critical hit damage on this one. Plus 100% to all Crusader skills and reduced cooldown reduction. And then the final Crusader item is Khalim's Will, which obviously was something that anybody could use, but hey, it was a flail, right? So that's a Crusader item. And so they're kind of, you know, modding that one over, since flails are the Crusader items in Diablo 3. You know, you got increased attack speed, crit chance, life per hit, reduces cooldown, reduces skill cooldowns, has the wrath regeneration, and the plus 100% to Crusader skills. You know, Khalim's Will didn't really have a whole lot going for it, besides the fact that it had no item requirements, and so you could actually throw Khalim's Will on a low-level character. And if you didn't mind sacrificing story progression on a character, just leveling one up to Act 3 and then throwing that one away, you could take the Khalim's Will, put it in, you know, and trade it to your mules or to, you know, your alts and such. So that way you could, you know, have a great starting weapon just because it did so much damage and had no, you know, requirements on it, so anybody could use it. We now have our Demon Hunter items. First one coming up, Wind Force. I don't think that I need to explain Wind Force, much like the Grandfather. This is just an extremely storied item, you know, in the franchise. One of the most powerful ranged weapons in Diablo 1, if not the most powerful ranged weapon in Diablo 1. You know, one of the most powerful and rarest items in Diablo 2. When it comes to, you know, ranged bows, which really only benefited the Amazon. But, you know, this bad boy, you know, has the increased damage. This one has both strength and dexterity, you know, which again seems a little bit weird, but remember, D2 strength increased all damage of skills, you know, not just melee. So you had like the Titan Amazons that would dump like 500 points into strength just because they didn't need block chance or anything. To stand halfway across the screen and try and get a little bit extra damage. Every point of strength increased your damage by 1%. In D2, and so, you know, most people only use strength to meet certain level requirements, but if you had at very high level characters, you could kind of twist things around and actually get a damage boost out of strength by stacking it to extremely high levels. This one also increases your attack speed. You get increased movement speed. It's got the chance of knockback on hit, which some people don't like having any type of hard crowd control on the weapons, but it is kind of like an iconic feature of the Wind Force. Plus 200% damage to all archery skills specifically. And so that will just be a small like nest of skills like multi-shot and such for the Demon Hunters. So this one is only going to be usable in like specific builds, as well as having the increased maximum damage equal to your Paragon level up to level 800, giving it some really high top-end damage on that one. Next up, we've got the Doomslinger. This is a one-handed crossbow. And this one has, increased damage, increased dexterity, attack speed, 10% life. It's got area damage on it, plus 100% to all Demon Hunter skills. Reduces the cooldown of skills and reduces resource costs. We also have the Brizado Kyanon. I cannot say that, I am sorry. But a Briza. We got a Briza, another storied weapon. This one has kind of like been reimagined from the Diablo 3 version of it. So you've got, the cold damage, because it was like one of the big proponents of the weapon being able to use it to slow enemies as you came in. Increased damage, dexterity, increased attack speed. It's got armor profile on it. 150% increased damage to all Demon Hunter skills, as well as a chance to freeze on hit in the increased maximum damage equal to your Paragon level. Next up is the monk weapons. We got some holdovers from the assassin, the Jade Talon, which has dexterity, life on hit, resistance to all elements. It's got 100% to all monk skills, reduces the cooldown of all skills. It grants 6 spirit per critical hit, and as well as critical consecutive hits against enemies increase your attack speed by 3%, stacking up to 30% for 3 seconds. The Shadow Killer, increased damage, increased dexterity, life per hit, 100% increased damage on all monk skills, reduces cooldown of class skills, reduces resource costs, grants spirit per crit, with a small chance to freeze enemies, which again some people don't like that at that very high end play, having built-in crowd control chance can screw with you when you get an unlucky proc, because you're trying to time in your CCs and such in order to keep the trash killer alive. And so there's like specific windows when you use it. You don't want to accidentally proc it and miss a window and such to make them immune when you're not supposed to be. But finally, for the monks, we've got Bartok's Cutthroat, which has your increased damage, strength, and dexterity, which again, is kind of more just a flavorful addition. Increased crit chance, your life on hit, and then the increase 100% to all monk skills. Next is the Necromancer items. We got the Soul Harvest, one-handed scythe, increased intelligence, increased resist to all elements, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, 100% bonus to all Necromancer skills, reduces the cooldown of all skills by 10, increased maximum essence, and then consecutive attacks against enemies increases your attack speed by 3% up to 3 seconds. This one's crazy. For like a poison scythe build, just getting that increased attack speed, reduced cooldown on is always amazing for Necromancers. The 100% damage bonus to all Necromancer skills means more than any other class, because whereas you might have like a Demon Hunter where it's like, oh, multi-shot deals 400% damage, or concussive arrow or cluster arrow does like 1,000% increased damage. Like base Necromancer skills are all like, I do 2,000% damage, come at me. So just Necromancer skills by their nature have higher base damage than almost any other class in the game, because that's just the way that they're designed. So Necromancers will get a larger bonus out of that increased damage on their skills, just the way that scaling works, because they're starting at a higher level, so the multiplicative change takes them even further beyond. And then that one's just so beautiful, so beautiful, because it has everything that you want for the poison scythe build. You know, the maximum essence, you know, the increased attack speed, reduced cooldown, critical hit, critical you know, critical damage. That's just sexy, you know. Black Box Sharp, poison skills deal increased damage. You know, you got your intelligence, attack speed, some armor, 100% increased damage to all Necromancer skills. Reduces the cooldown of all skills by 7%. It's got the chance to proc, a small chance to proc slow, and then consecutive hits against enemies increases your damage by 10% up to 100. Another, you know, wonderful, you know, potential item there. You know, one, you've got an additional source of poison damage. You've got, instead of increased attack speed, you just have your additional attacks against the enemy. It can increase your damage up to 100%. Probably an additive bonus, not a multiplicative one, but still, hey, damage is damage. Either one that you find, you're probably going to end up using, though Necromancer is pretty stacked on their weapon slots. That legendary property is going to matter. The passive one, not so much. And then the final Necromancer, we have the Black Hand Key, which is a wand. You know, so it's a Necromancer wand, which in and of itself is a cool thing, since wands are the class item for the wizard in Diablo 3, but they were the neutral class item in D2, because in the original D2, all of the classes had an item that only they benefited from, such as like the scepter for paladins or wands for the Necromancer, but anybody could equip. You know, even though the wands might be specifically for Necromancer skills, anyone could equip a wand. It wasn't until Larger Destruction that they added in the class-specific items, which for the Necromancer was the Shrunken Head. And that item only the Necromancer could equip. Or, you know, the Paladin Shields. You know, the Wizard then had... the Wizards had their wands, you know, that only they could equip and so forth instead of their staves, whichever you prefer. Sorry, I don't want to, you know, piss off anybody. But it's nice that we have a wand for a Necromancer, finally. And this one is increased intelligence, increased resist to all elements, increased attack speed, life percentage, the Necromancer skill bonus, reduces the cooldown on all skills, 40%, 46% increased damage to undead, and cursed enemies are feared in place for 7 seconds. So that one, you know, could have some potential. You know, if you're using like Frozen Lands on a Z Necro or something along those lines, because it's just an extra source of CC to go through and keep things kind of like rooted in place. You know, just a nice little fun addition. Witch Doctors, you know, Witch Doctors are you're going to notice they're pulling from a couple of things, because the Witch Doctor for the most part in Diablo 3 was a parallel of the Necromancer from D2, and so, you know, if it were to go through and take anything from D2, it'd be taking Necromancer items, so that they found a way to make it work. So the first one up is Ariok's Needle, which is a spear, and this one has, you know, increased damage, intelligence, the increased attack speed, critical hit, critical damage, which is, you know, lovely having on a weapon. Your increased bonus to all Witch Doctor skills, as well as increasing your top end damage up to 800 based on your Paragon level. Ghost Flame, it's this one is increased attack speed, increased Witch Doctor skills, reduces the cooldown of skills, grants 7 mana per critical hit, increases your gold and health globe pickup range, and then consecutive hits against enemies increase your attack speed by 3%. You know, some of those modifiers are popping up all over the place. And finally, like Gibden, you know, which, you know, obviously was already a Witch Doctor weapon, but is like Khalim's Flail was a you know, kind of like a story element weapon that you would get throughout the course of the game. And this one is increased attack speed, critical hit, critical damage, reduces your cooldown of all skills, and picking up a health globe increases your movement speed by 40% for a few seconds. You know, the Witch Doctor ones are nice and flavorful, you know, maybe not as big of an impact as like some of the other classes. And then finally the Wizard, which of course we have the Wizard Spike, while in D2 was not a Wizard specific item, was like the ultimate caster, you know, unique that was out there. This one gives increased damage, to all, or increased resistance to all elements, increases attack speed by only 13%. 100% increased damage to all wizard skills, reduces the cooldown of all skills by up to 10%. Arcane power regeneration and maximum arcane. I was hoping that they would go a little bit crazier on this one, because the big thing with the wizard spike was it just had it had the massive increase to faster cast rate, and so the wizard spike just allowed you to absolutely blitz non cooldown locked skills. And this one is only increased 13% attack speed. I would have liked to have seen, up to 15%. I would have liked to have seen this one increase attack speed by 30%. Who cares? Go crazy. These items only exist for a single season, because this is the one seasonal. This is them going back on from a couple years ago, where there wouldn't be season specific items anymore. In this one, you can only get these items in the season, and after the season's over, they disappear. These will never come into the main game. This is your only chance to play around with them. And so I would have liked them to have gone a little bit more crazier with some of the wizard stuff on that one, to be a little bit more true to the power of the wizard spike. Next, we've got the Oculus, which is intelligence, vitality, resistance to all elements, increased elite damage, the bonus to wizard skills, reduces the cooldown of all skills, and then arcane power granted on hit. And then finally, Meng Song's Lesson, extremely rare item from Diablo 2 that gives you a bonus to all wizard elements, so cold, fire, lightning, arcane, various amounts of elemental bonuses, which is nice to get another source getting that damage onto an item that normally wouldn't roll it. You have intelligence, because it is a two-hander. This one also has the 300% increased damage to wizard skills, because it's not just trying to compete with the properties that you might have on your offhand. The offhand also increases your damage, which makes the one-handers so much more preferable to two-handers, for wizards. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why every class prefers one-handers besides crusaders. And then this one increases your arcane power regeneration, increased damage to undead, and if you wonder why a lot of these things have this increase, this random bonus to increase damage to undead, that was the earlier Diablo games were heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, and in Dungeons and Dragons, bludgeoning weapons could deal increased damage to say skeletons and other types of undead and such, and so all the bludgeoning weapons, maces, staves, all the other types of things had an innate bonus against undead in Diablo 2, just as a base property of the weapon. If you found a broken maul on the ground, it had a damage bonus against undead, because it was a bludgeoning weapon. It's what it did. So if you're wondering where those come from, and that's kind of the rundown of everything. There's some like I said, with the Necromancer, not all of the items are created equally, of course. Some are going to eke out with some better bonuses than others. Some classes might have access to, here's some elemental damage, or here's stacking attack speed, or just the insanity that is getting any type of multiplier on Necromancer skills. Some like the Witch Doctor, maybe not as interesting, or the Monk, although the Monk is in a relatively good place as it stands. Not really having too much interesting mechanics to play around with, might vary up with what you want to do. But the big thing with this season is that you want to play all of the classes, and that's going back into, does it say here? Yeah, let me just pull up the actual patch notes again real quick. And so it does go through, and it mentions here that if you collect all 21 ethereal items during Season 24, you'll get a feat of strength, which you'll have access to all of the transmog options for future seasonal and non-seasonal content. Because all of the, a lot of these items are going to have unique graphics, unique sound effects and such. and they'll only exist for this season. You're not going to be able to find them ever again. You can't transmog them, you can't modify them in any way, but the only way to actually unlock their transmog is to find all of them. And so that's going to be quite the grind for this particular season. And it's going to have people going through and playing classes they might not normally. Now, with it being, harder to find than Ancients, but not quite as bad as Primals, some people have noticed some, obviously, we are an incredibly heavily data-driven community, and people are going to find ways in order to min-max everything, including gaming the way that this works. And so right now, the prevailing way of getting through this achievement on the PTR, which of course is slightly modified because the PTR has the 2,000% increased legendary drop rate, is that ethereal items start dropping at level 11. And anyone that's tried to go through and find a particular item in order to cube to get the property for, know that you can manipulate item drops based on your character's level. That the easiest way to get items is to go as low of a level as possible, because you weed out the potential legendary and set pieces that might potentially drop for your character. And if you go all the way down to level 11, the actual legendary drop pool is extremely low. So if you go through and you luck out and roll a legendary drop, and then it rolls well, through the magic find or whatever, it's going to be dropping the ethereal items more often than what they do at 70, because you have such an increased pool of items which to drop from. Because it has to drop as a dagger first before it can turn into a Gibden. And so you have all these things going through and dropping, so that they're just gaming the system, and they're getting a much higher acquisition rate of the ethereal items at level 11 than they are at level 70. And, this is something that, of course, has been reported and talked about on the forums, and as far as PTR feedback. Whether this stays in the game or not, we don't know. Whether the developers tell us that they made changes to it or not before the season starts, we might not know. But some discussions I've seen have talked about making the feat of strength only apply to level 70 items. So that way you have to find the item at level 70 for it to count to the feat of strength. As it is now, any items that you find while leveling will count towards the feat of strength. So you don't actually have to level and gear up the character to 70 and start, going through and pushing, your, greater of 75s, 100s, whatever it is that you use. At least, to maximize your rewards, you want to run greater of 90s. So that way you have your highest chance at going through and, getting these wonderful items. You might be better off just rolling a level 11 character, getting a max level person to come in on a Torment 6, open up a rift, have you die at the beginning of the rift so you don't gain any more experience and you're not going to level up and dilute your item pool, and then just staying dead at the beginning of the instance while they go through and kill everything, and then after everything's done, then rezzing and collecting all of your beautiful, lovely green glowing pieces. Is kind of like the way that you can game and cheese the system if you want to just farm these. Now, I'm not making any judgment calls or anything about if that is against the spirit of the item hunt, or if it's a clever use of game mechanics, or if it's just something the people that don't have as much time and just want to go through, collect their pretty transmogs, and then be done with the season and move on from there. No judgment, nothing at all. Whichever you see best. If you are only going to go through and work on that achievement at level 70, then all the power to you. And if you're going to just sit there with a whole bunch of dead level 11 characters and relying on the kindness of your friends, no judgment there either. I will probably be one of those ones that might, as my seasons always go, I save everything until the last minute. You'll find me going through and spamming, hey, can you run me through some tier 6 rifts on my level 11 barbarian? Though it is nice to finish off some of those achievements, like getting, the multiple barbarians or multiple wizards and such, like classes I never play, to level 70. I think a barbarian, I might not even have a level 70 barbarian that I ever leveled. Just being honest. Let alone 2. To finish off those class achievements for the barbarian. So, it will give me an excuse to work on some achievements that, I've been going through and needing to finish. I have no idea if I will ever fully finish, like, all the achievements in Diablo 3. The achievement hunter, that was my primary reason of playing, like, World of Warcraft and such in my trophy chasing days on PlayStation are well long past me. But it might be something, a cool goal to shoot for, besides, like, the 1 million bounties. Might be a cool thing to shoot for prior to the Diablo 4 launch. Yeah, because that's still, like, what? Year away? Year and a half away? 2 years away? It's scary thinking about. We won't talk about that one. We'll go through and move on. But, moving on from Diablo 3, that puts us into Diablo 4, and, one of the last questions that we had from the last episode, devblog win? I literally didn't even change my show notes on this one. I just kept that bullet point on there, devblog win. I mean, it is, as I was going through and talking with Watson before the show, it's the 23rd. We got 7 days left in order to go through and knock this one out. There's a chance it might be tomorrow. A little bit less likely that they're going to go through. They don't tend to make a lot of big announcements on Fridays. It's usually towards the middle of the week. So maybe there's a chance that we'll get it tomorrow. But maybe, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week might be, closer to the mark. I guess not Thursday, because Thursday is July 1st. So I guess Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Cutting it close on this one. Cutting it real close on this one. Watch it go through and actually go and pop out tomorrow. And you might even listen to this in a weird order. Because, as I said on the last episode, I will record an episode of the Westmarch Workshop the day that the dev blog comes out, permitting, life and schedule permitting, in order to go through and give my feedback. So you can expect an episode, 212.5 to come in before episode 213. So I will, go through and, recommit to that. Depending upon when it does come out, if there's some prior engagements or something, I might have to do it the day after. But I will at least make one, close to it. I won't wait till Wednesday or anything. You'll definitely be getting in another episode of me. Hey, twice the amount of Diablo talk, right? But as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I wanted to take a little bit of time and rant about some non-Diablo related topics, but it'll make sense with something that's been going through and going on. And one of my other passions, if you listen to the show, you know that I also play Warhammer, both like Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, and such. And there was a really big announcement today in the Warhammer community, because the company that makes Warhammer, Games Workshop, kind of debuted their own streaming service. Warhammer Plus, great marketing, right? But it's something that they had actually announced this a month ago, and everyone was like, "What can you possibly do for a streaming service?" Because this is just like a tabletop miniatures game. Like, sure, you went through and you've got some animated content and such, but how could you justify having a full-blown streaming service when, like, people criticized Disney Plus when it first launched for not having, like, enough content? Like, sure, you got, like, the Disney catalog and stuff like there, but there's not new content coming. And, like, the same thing for Games Workshop. You might have, like, loads of, like, maybe painting tutorials or something, but what could you offer? And then they went through, and then the price point and the goods that you get with it, because it isn't just like some of the animated content and things that they're going and working on in the background. They're doing some very high level painting tutorials that go beyond the regular weekly content that they do on their YouTube channel. They're also doing like official battle reports and like competitive analysis. They're having like official lore series as well, which is of course the lore of Warhammer going back decades is tremendous. I mean, the Horus Heresy is over 60 books in length now at this point, and that's just like the prequel to Warhammer 40,000. Having like 60 full-length novels to go through and tell the story. There's a lot of lore to go through and cover there. Imagine if Blizzard did the same thing, like once a week or even once a month they put out a 30-minute episode or hour-long episode talking about like one specific aspect of one of their franchise's lore or story, because they're the developers, they're the ones that wrote this stuff. No one has better access to this story and content than they do, and then they are also adding in some other stuff. Their tabletop miniatures game, and so if you have a full year subscription, they'll send you a free model. That's exclusive to that. You get VIP rewards for like their in-person like tournaments and events. In addition, you also get their companion apps, which are normally a paid content service, for free in the subscription. And it's just like the apps, if you get both like the 40K and the Age of Sigmar app, in US dollars you're paying like $6 a month, and then the streaming service is going to be $6 a month and include both the apps. So it's like, it's gonna be the price that I pay, the monthly price that I pay for these apps already, which a lot of people find value for in that price point. Plus you're gonna give me like masterclass level painting tutorials in like premium content, like animated shows and things. Yeah, why not do it? And it got me thinking that, like, when is Blizzard gonna make a goddamn web show? I want you to travel back with me just like a couple of years back to the actual launch of Overwatch. I thought that was going to be, that was the time. This is when it's going to happen. Blizzard is going to finally take the steps and become like a whole, multi discipline like entertainment medium. It's not just going to be video games. Like, they had dabbled in comics, they had dabbled in novels, they had done like art books and such. We had, at that point we had Wrath. They had started, they were hard at work with the Warcraft movie. It's like this is Blizzard is finally going to go through and take it on and become a full entertainment company, not just a video game maker. Because with Overwatch, think about it, they did webcomics. They had the fully cinematic like character introductions, like the way that they introduced like the characters, like with Soldier and all those others, where they had like the full blown like in-game, like not in-game cinematics, but the fully like rendered cinematics and such in the style of the game, that we always hope that we get more of with every title that Blizzard ever does. And then they also started doing like animated shorts. Like they started going outside of Blizzard and contracting, third parties to go and make like these animated shorts for the character introductions, like for Doomfist and such. And they started really going out there and pulling in more outside sourced, creatives in order to create more and more content, in order to build up the franchise. And you take that, and then we start getting like our first rumors that they're working on this Netflix series, and now they're working on another Diablo comic run. The Warcraft movie, bombed in the US but did really well internationally, and they're already talking it might have made enough money in China to warrant a sequel, or some Chinese production companies might want to fund a sequel to the movie and such. And then just nothing. it all fizzled. You know, we still got a couple of new characters in Overwatch, and they had, you know, their lovely little cinematics at BlizzCon to introduce them, and we of course get a new cinematic with every World of Warcraft expansion. You know, but a lot of that other third-party content just kind of like died off. And during this same period of time, Games Workshop, that makes little plastic figures, it has absolutely nothing to do with any type of virtual medium or anything like that, starts their YouTube channel with painting tutorials. And then from there, they started doing like little like motion comics, you know, like they're all 2D images, but you know, they give like the illusion of motion and such. Not Flash, you know, not that bad, but like motion comics for just like their product announcements, you know, for the different armies and things, in order to get like hype and add that little extra bit of storytelling elements. And like you had just fans of those franchises. I don't know if Dreadsight's in the chat, but like you had fans get inspired and create like Hell's Reach. You know, that they went and they retold some of these Games Workshop stories, but they animated it, and they had the huge, you know, hours of fan-made content, all the way up until you had some other things like Astartes, which like is amazing. Even if you know nothing about Warhammer 40,000, go on YouTube and look up Astartes. It is absolutely amazing. It's like, I think all 4 episodes you watch in about like 10 minutes. It's very, very, very short. That just these like next level like content that's like produced at a level that you would expect from like a AAA franchise, like a cutscene from like a AAA video game, you know. And this is just fans doing stuff for free, you know, to throw up on YouTube and such. And it really increased the popularity. Like, you know, like with Dreadsight started going through and watching like Hell's Reach, and never played a game of 40K or anything like that. But it like then through that he got interested in the lore and the franchise and such. And then the people that made that, the person that made Astartes, singular, one guy, then got approached by Games Workshop, and they're like, hey, how would you like to do that and get paid for it? Sure. And so Games Workshop hired these people to go through, keep your production studio, your own thing or anything like that. We'll give you a budget, and then let's make like a 10-episode series. You know, let's actually like make a show out of what it is that you're going through and working on. And then reaching out and doing like an animatrix style like compilation, they call it, I believe, Hammer and Bolter. That's just like a whole bunch of compilations of different, you know, animation studios combining like 3D animated, traditional 2D animated, like more serious like film noir style to like comic book style and stuff like that animation, just running the full gamut to show all the different facets of like the Warhammer universe, both 40K and Age of Sigmar. And they've embraced this aspect, and like, you know, they're branching out into this level of business when their main bread and butter is just like putting out books and models. But they saw the opportunity there in order to go through and like expand like their reach through this type of kind of like supplementary content. And you know, they had no backbone or anything that would really overlap with that whatsoever. And I just look at it and it's like, man, Blizzard was like setting themselves up. They were heading in this direction with Overwatch, and then, you know, something happened, and then they decided to, you know, call all that back. When they should have just embraced it. They should have taken it to the next level. They should still take it to the next level. I still want my goddamn Netflix / streaming whatever Diablo series. It probably is not going to be on Netflix due to ongoing legal battles between Activision and Netflix. But, you know, they've got the ability to do that, you know, with just like Games Workshop did. There's lots of machinima creators out there that you could go through and hire on, give a budget, and like, you know, produce something, you know, with this. You have your own in-game team. Look at some of the in-game cinematics that World of Warcraft has. That's like the quality of the models and the camera work that they have for those in-game cinematics is like top tier. You know, so you don't even have to like wind up like a whole studio and get, you know, outside artists and stuff like that to build, you know, a content team to do like a 2D animated show or anything like that. You've got the cinematics department. Hire more people and give them a bigger budget and have them start going through and putting out, you know, like little like 5 or 10 episode miniseries or something like that. You know, go through, look at every single WoW expansion in recent history going and doing their little 2D animated vignettes. Like when you go through and you watch, you know, like the Afterlife series for Shadowlands, like those are things that without even like fully knowing or understanding all of the characters, like, because I never really played, you know, Warcraft 1 and only a minimal amount of Warcraft 2, I didn't really know who Draco was. I could definitely feel for her going through and watching the Maldraxxus story. You know, it's, you know, there's so many things that you can go through and do, and like those little, you know, kind of like animated like motion comics, you know, could do well going and making like you know, just constant miniseries and stuff like that. You know, because Blizzard, like Games Workshop, has decades worth of lore and story. You know, like, you don't even have to make something new for Diablo. Like, Diablo 1 is so old, like, just retell the story in a you know, an animated show. Make it, you know, dark and brutal like Castlevania. You know, just give us a canon story of what actually happened, because the story, there's like, you know, there's such minimal story in the actual game itself. It was all like world building through the grimoires and such. And the any of the actual story that we have now of like D1 has been, you know, pseudo retconned and attributed to it in other titles of various sources. You know, like Aiden being the warrior and all those other types of such. Like, just like make that. Make like an hour-long movie, you know, make a, you know, like an 8-episode mini-series for streaming or something like that, you know, to go through and do it. You know that there's a market out there for it. Diablo has sold better than Castlevania. More people have touched a Diablo game than they have Castlevania games. And look at how well Castlevania did on Netflix. But the last Castlevania game that I played was Symphony of the Night, you know. It's been decades since I played a Castlevania title, but dear God, it's like one of my favorite TV shows ever now. It was so well done, you know, with fully fleshed out characters and story. They made a lot of changes. I didn't notice, like I said, not a Castlevania fan, but they like, even the hardcore Castlevania fans were like, that makes sense, that's cool, whatever. You know, there's a lot of story and opportunity there, and honestly, Blizzard's just leaving a lot on the table. There's a lot that they could go through and do with like 3 of the most storied franchises in like video game history, between Warcraft, StarCraft, and Diablo. And then, you know, the cultural phenomenon that was Overwatch was begging. It was like Overwatch just begged for it. Like, but then again, like I said, it seemed like they were going in that direction with it. Yeah. Tabletop Miniatures Company launching a streaming service with premium, you know, animated content. They've got like, I think like 18 different shows that they plan to launch in the next year. You know, we have no idea. Some of them might be like one-off movies. Some of them might be actually like dedicated like series and such. You know, Netflix has popularized like the whole 8 to 10 episodes, you know, series, only like 20 minutes an episode in a season, like every year or two. You know, so you don't have to like go through and get committed to 24 episodes every 12 months. You know, with what used to be the day, people are happy with just like smaller limited releases. You know, just as long as the quality and the content are there. Or even just like the thing that like just blew my mind was like, you know, there's so much about all of the Blizzard franchises when it comes to like the lore and the story. Just like it is in like, you know, for Games Workshop and the Warhammer franchises. There's so much in-depth lore and story and characters and settings and such that there are, you know, YouTube channels out there dedicated just to covering different aspects of it because of how deep it is. And then they're taking that and they're doing like their own official lore series because it's just so popular. Like, imagine if Blizzard did that. Like, once a month, they did like a 30-minute show. It'd be, I know I'm repeating myself, but it would be amazing. That would be, people would love that, you know. It's such a great avenue, and especially because, you know, GW is then going through and tying it in. Is that oh yeah, and if you subscribe for a full year, we'll send you a model. They're keeping it in, you know, in coherence with like their primary business. Like this is just a supplementary business, you know. And with Blizzard, it's easy, you know, tie it into like the BattleNet launcher or something like that. Make you know, BattleNet Plus, you know, and do like your streaming content through there. And so you hit the button to watch your show right next to the button to play the game. You know, how awesome would that be? You know, because you could go through and it's like, let's go through and like, you know, watch like, you know, the prequel series to Diablo 4. You know, they got a little animated movie because remember like in like the 2000s, early like 2010s when that was all the rage. You know, like that they would go and they would make like a mini like 30-40 minute animated film to tie in with the video game product. Like Dead Space has a movie that's the prequel to the game. You know, it's the prequel story that leads into the actual title itself. You know, imagine if you go through and you watch it, and it's like, yeah, this is like the prequel story, you know, leading up how that band of you know, bandits got to that town and down into the you know, the chamber in order to summon Lilith. You know, what if it goes through and tells their story of them like meeting in a tavern and, you know, Magnus the cultist going through and manipulating or charming them and giving them promises of grandeur and such and winning them all over and then dragging them down, them getting attacked by the ghouls and the other nasties, you know, down there in the catacombs, and it stops, you know, and the show just stops right there with them like getting, you know, chased towards the bridge. And then like just a little icon that goes through and pops up, you know, like click here to play D4. And then it just takes you straight into, you know, then the opening cinematic. I don't know. They're just spitballing some of my ideas. The things that some other companies have seen opportunity and the ability to profit and expand their reach. You know, because like with Warhammer, tabletop figurines, expensive tabletop figurines, it's a niche. You know, that's niche. That's about as niche as you get. But they found a way that, hey, we can go through and open up our marketability by expanding out into like some streaming services and such. And we think that we can actually offer like a really dedicated product that will at first be open just like the dedicated core fans and such, but still might offer something to people that want to tiptoe into it. You know, Blizzard could do the same, especially going through and tying it into the launcher. It just makes so much more sense. So, hey, we saw that you just watched your Overwatch, like this Overwatch short. You know, how about 15% off of Overwatch? We got some new skins. You know, it's all right there. Hell, I mean, Blizzard could probably just get away with charging $15 a month for the service and just saying you get a free WoW subscription out of it. Even at like WoW's low point right now, they're still like trending like 300 or 3 million users in World of Warcraft between classic and retail. There's you know, that's you know, pretty, that would be a pretty hefty start, you know, to go through day one of your streaming service and you got 3 million subscribers, right? Turn your World of Warcraft subscription into something along those lines. Although I don't think that they would do that. WoW while still, you know, predicates its own, you know, reason for having that subscription fee. But, you know, get 10% off, get a free month, something like that. There's a lot of things that you could do. Or even just, you know, Blizzard is probably big enough and has large enough reach that they could not even do it, just do it through YouTube and make marketing money off of it or something. Just thoughts and ideas. Thoughts and ideas. Things that I personally, as a fan, would like to see, and with how often it comes up of Blizzard, you should make your own movies, you know, around everywhere. That, you know, maybe, hey, Blizzard, you should make your own movies. But with that, I've ranted enough. And I will go through and bring the episode to a close here. And so thank you all again for going through, joining me live. And also for those fans that still go through and listen, you know, on YouTube, or, you know, the majority of the you know, the listeners out there on, you know, your various podcasting platforms of iTunes, Stitcher, and what have you. You know, thanks for going through, tuning in, listening to this episode. I do want to apologize with how delayed the last couple of episodes have been. I have no excuses on that one. It's not even about going through and having issues with the program. I've gotten pretty good with the program now, and I can get it not quite as edited as quickly as I could before, but it's just you know, everything going on and time management and such. It's been hard to dedicate the time to it. So again, I apologize for that, and I promise to do better. And then for long shot, you know, maybe some extra streams here and there. Now that I got all the tournament prep out of the way, I got another tournament, you know, going through, coming up in August. And so I've been trying to build at least 1 or 2 models every single night. It's not happening today because I'm probably going to bed shortly after the stream. But maybe we can get some streams in and do some like hangout and hobby, you know, for some Warhammer while we wait for some more Diablo stuff to hit us. You know, season 24, not too far. Definitely looking forward to that one and going and doing the item hunt. We'll see how that goes and pans out. And of course, the forever wait for that Diablo web series. Please be real. Well, we kind of know that they were working on it, but please be real. Anyways, thanks for going through, listening to the show. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to drop me a line at westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. Again, that email address is westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. You know, you can also follow the show here live every other Wednesday at twitch.tv/blizzpro at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. You can also find the show on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, your podcasting platform of choice. You can follow and to find out when the show itself goes live and when those episodes go through and get posted to YouTube by following the show on Twitter at the WM Workshop. And then you can also go through and follow my personal account where I talk a lot of things besides just Diablo over at Neinball Gamer on Twitter or at twitch.tv/Neinball. Yeah, I look forward to going through and chatting with you all sooner than within the next 2 weeks as we await the quarterly D4 blog. And again, I will be streaming once that blog goes live. Follow the show for more information on when I will go live, just in case I can't make it the night that the blog goes up. That might be later. But until next time, catch you all, and have a good evening.